All right. Well, why don't we get started? Because everybody is here. Why don't we start with the earnings calls happening 2 weeks from now, on Wednesday, the 24th. And the interesting thing about this earnings call this time around is that Elon has said that after the earnings call, when the 10Q drops, then he's going to do a special space. He's going to talk about 2023, but he's also going to talk about the future of 2024. So I wanted to ask the panel here, what do you think he's going to talk about? What is your expectations? And then in addition to that, right after that, I want to talk about there's several concepts, several ideas that Tesla's working on that could actually come sooner than we all realize. We can talk about that too. So let's get started with you, Alexandra. What do you think he's going to do, and why do you think he set this space up?
I'm actually very happy that he's doing that. So you have to know that it's the 10K, and the 10K is what comes out once a year. We have quarterlies, those are called 10Qs, and then we have once a year at the end of January, the 10K that sums up the whole financial year. So in this case, 2023, and that gives much more guidance and much more details than the 10Qs. So when I usually read the 10K, I need 3 days. I mean, I know I exaggerate, but it's really the detail is the devil is in the detail, and there's stuff in there. For example, I'm sure we'll hear about the announcement when they will do this year's shareholder meeting. I'm sure we'll have more details on capex expenditure, because I do believe they're going to raise it from the 7 to 9 billion that they currently announced to a much higher rate. So I think he wants to let people digest the 10K, and I mean, anybody that loves this paper stuff like I do is always looking forward to the 10K publications, just because there's so much to it, and so 24th usually takes 3-4 days to get those out. So let's say 28th, Monday, usually after the Wednesday earnings call. And then 2 or 3 days later, probably again a Wednesday. He seems to like Wednesdays for events, which is a good press cycle day, because then it still gets picked up on Thursday and Friday, and then the story is over. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I do believe it's going to be around the last day of January. My big hopes are that he then lays out the business case for FSD, because I think it shifted. You know, you hear me all talk about it for the last couple of weeks. I think they understand the bot has now priority over robotaxis, and I want to hear that if that's true. He already sort of suggested when he talked about supervised FSD, and so that whole, which is, you know, the value of Tesla, the whole vision part of Tesla, be it in cars, be it in bots, be it on Dojo, it needs explaining, it needs bringing together. How do these businesses interact? Which one is now number one? Which one comes, you know, what's the timeline? What is the estimated timeline? And I'm really very much looking forward. And I think we're actually in for a lot of good surprises, because the market doesn't seem to credit Tesla with a lot of things to come in the next 3 to 6, even 12 months. So I have the feeling we can only have positive surprises there, because nobody really expects much. And that's my favorite position when I go into these calls.
Exactly right. So do you think he still joined the earnings call, because it's only at the earnings call that he'll be
Oh, don't make me hopeful. Don't make me hopeful. I mean, I've been crying for 2 years that he shouldn't do those earnings calls. The only reason that I think he will still this year is because the CFO is not really CFO, right? It's still this intermediate position. So I do believe he still feels he should be there. I still hope he would not, but that's
right.
me.
Because that's what I thought would happen, right? Earnings call, leave him alone, and then he gets his space, his time to speak. But it's going to be very positive. Otherwise, why would he talk about, you know, what to expect 2024? Hey, Jeff.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Let me just add. I also believe that it gives him a brilliant way of deflecting during the earnings call. Meaning, if on the earnings call they come with some stupid questions like they always do, these Wall Street analysts, he can just say, well, you know what, we're doing this big thing in 10 days or in a week. Let's talk then about it, which sort of takes the wind off their sails, and helps him to do it his way, in his order, in the way he wants to present it.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I like when he involves more of his staff in these things. I hope he does that because they tend to do a lot more. Like everything's in Elon's head, but they tend to do a lot more prep work and kind of articulating, like where they see 2024 going. I don't know. This is a unique thing. I mean, there's a reason. I think we have to think about this thing in terms of events. Like, you know, there's the shareholders event, there's AI day, there's things like that. Why is this scheduled? I think we have to ask ourselves that question. If there was no news to share, well, why would you do it? But not so he's kind of come on the last two or three earnings calls, and he's been pretty gloomy. Um, and what I've been saying is you always have to look at what Tesla is doing. Alexander uses this term breadcrumbs too. I like that too. Like you have to look at like you follow the breadcrumbs, like what are they doing, and then as it leads up to the actual event, whatever that is, hopefully there's no surprises. But what Tesla's been doing is they've been adding capacity when others have been pulling back. They've been hiring. They've expanded their hiring. And another thing that Alexander does a great job of posting about on X is just when these interesting roles come about. They're hiring the actual industrialization team, for example, for the bot. They're not just hiring the engineers like we saw with the figure postings. They're actually hiring the industrialization team for the bot, which tells you that they're closer. They're getting closer. And they have a lot of other requisitions. I thought were I think like it didn't look like these are the ones that underwent like tremendous scrutiny. It looks like they're in like full on expansionary mode. And then they're adding all this capacity back. They've turned on all these restarts for all the factory expansions, the things that may have been slowed down or halted in the background. And there may be an India announcement coming soon. So, I mean, Tesla's actions are in expansionary mode, both for capital and for people and labor, both the indirect labor, the engineering types and product types, and as well as for the factories. So I would be, and then the backdrop is you got an interest rate backdrop that's not in the first half of this year. It's not going to be not going to be great. It's going to probably be very similar to where it is now, but it's not getting worse, and it's projected to get better. In the second half of the year, maybe sooner. We'll see how what the CPI looks like on this Thursday, for example. So with that as a backdrop, I would hope that we get a different tone from Elon. I don't think he's going to go from gloomy Elon to dancing like Fred Astaire, Elon. I don't think we're going to get that, but I think we may get something in the middle where there's a lot more optimism. And if you balance out the optimism and some of the pessimism, maybe it's more neutral to slightly positive. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I am intrigued that there's the special event being called. So I mean, there's probably a story to tell. The question is, what is the story? Um, is it around their priorities? Is it around what they're doing with autonomy? I've always thought that the next path for autonomy is for them to expand the current FSD offering globally, and to massively increase that training, massively increase the global reach of that, and then eventually to get a license partner. So I think there's a number of directions it can go in. But like I said, if you follow their actions, it looks like they're back in expansionary mode when others are contracting.
Yeah, I have a prediction, and so far my recent predictions have been coming true. I think at this event, he's going to make it very, very clear that Tesla is now an AI and robotics AI company. He's been using that term 2 or 3 times in the last month, and the backdrop, as you put it, Jeff, is that right? The competition is just blowing up in the out there with Nvidia's progress and Google DeepMind dropping things and the robots and what they're able to compete with. Tesla needs to step up and say, we are the leader in both robotics and AI, and here's what we're doing, because it's all about attracting the best talent, making sure they don't lose anybody. It's about showing that they are really going to head in this direction. So there's going to be some, just he will definitely repeat that. It's like a bingo. We'll play that game, and robotics AI company will be one of the first things that comes out of his mouth. Let's hear from you, Xander.
I think it's going to be a vision casting. I think he's. I thought Alexander's point regarding um, maybe sharpening the business cases for and putting some specific numbers behind the product, potential products in the near future. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, why don't we let Sat go? He's got something to say.
Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. That I'd be surprised if he didn't mention anything about AI robotics. That is clearly what he's starting to say. What's really historically interesting is that when the Model S and X was like at full volume production and they're selling as many units as they can, he was basically reiterating they're a hardcore tech company, and nobody. Like, obviously they know what they're doing behind the scenes with all the FSD development and what so forth on the software side. And so we're not going to see like the actual product like ready to go or anything, but we've already seen a ton of videos. And so I think that shift is happening already. But obviously we're not going to see the results for a few years, but that change is going to and shift is going to be a major new wave for Tesla's development.
Okay, and Christian, do you want to join in?
Yeah, I'm waiting to be called on, Herbert. I'll join in.
Yeah.
Save the best for last. I love it. No, so let's make sure he has one. I think he said he was going to do a SpaceX one the end of this week or so, and we still don't have a SpaceX talk.
No.
Unless I missed it.
No,
did he do it?
To SpaceX investors. Are you invested in SpaceX?
No, but he said he was going to do a talk on the tweet. He said he's going to do a talk in SpaceX and then a talk in Tesla later.
No, I think he's talking to SpaceX investors, doing them a yearly roundup where we're now and whatever.
Okay.
I don't think it's a public space.
Oh, okay. Maybe. Are we sure the Tesla one's a public thing?
Sure, because that's a public company.
Okay. All right. Maybe I misinterpreted the tweet. I thought he was just doing a general what they were talking about the mission of the company. Yeah, I think he's going to try to. I think what Tesla needs to do is message better. Jeff always talks about this, like messaging. I don't know what the message of Elon is anymore because the last few conference calls, he's just been very worried about interest rates and things of that nature. So I think that's kind of what's held the stock down. Is I don't think investors know what to expect from Tesla. I don't think they understand what's coming from earnings. So I think Tesla is a great company, but they have to sharpen their message, right? They have to explain to investors what they are, what kind of company they are, and what the next few years in an optimistic way looks like for Tesla, and they need to highlight what the bright points are, and stop giving us the gloom and doom, right? Because the Fed's done raising interest rates, so you can't. Like Jeff said, you can't keep talking about that and expect your stock price to go up when you're telling investors things are bad. So I would love to hear some positive messaging, some clear, concise, some thought out messaging to investors specifically. We always get the engineer talk and we always get the great plans for 10 years from now, but the stock price has moved, and I'm just saying, nowhere in 3+ years. It's lower than where it was 3+ years from December of 21, I believe, something like that. It's been 3 years. So I think, Elon, this is time now to at least give investors something to grab onto and say, hey, here's why you should invest in us rather than some of these other guys. And I think that would go a long way. And I'm not saying it would rocket the stock, but it would just give some reassurance that Elon is on the task. And again, I don't want to reiterate this, but communication, I know it's looked at in this community as a silly thing. There's no way you're going to get these great things occurring, even if some good things happen in the automotive business and margins go up a little bit, if you don't communicate to investors and to other people why they should invest in your company. So I agree with Jeff. The doom and gloom has to stop. And you could talk about risk, but you also have to give, I would give 75% of that conference call, or maybe this is what this talk is, to give us more reassurance to the investor base, why you should invest in Tesla and why the next 1, 2, 3, 5 years out are going to be amazing.
Okay. I'm going to change the topic to the next one. So, obviously, us Tesla Bulls, we're very optimistic. Many of us have set timelines that doesn't happen. And so we've learned in the last 2 years specifically, to be careful, to not get our hopes up, and to be, just to always think that things are going to happen much later than we expect. Now, having said that, there's three things that there's a lot of rumors that have been happening. So I'd like to ask the panel if you think that these are all nothing burgers, don't get your hopes up, or is there might be something to this. So the first one is that there's been talk and signs that Model 3 Highland, or a version of the Model 3 Highland for the US, could actually be launch sooner than we realize. So the Model 3, there's been, we've seen Shanghai insignia, but there's also just lots of sightings of more of these Model 3 Highland versions showing up near the factories. And there's some people saying that the production lines have already been changed or updated in Fremont. I think there's a rumor that Robert Scoble spoke to one of the employees there, and that's what he was told. So that's one. Model 3 Highland could actually appear sooner than we realize. And in fact, I think somebody even said maybe even this Sunday they might announce it. So don't get your hopes up on that one. The other one is FSD being released in China. There's again some credible sources, but they've not revealed their sources saying that FSD in China is imminent. They're going to announce that. We do know that FSD will be rolled out in China. Even the government set up policies. We've seen the code you can see it in the code for both Europe and China and even Australia that FSD will be rolled out there. And the third one is FSD version 12. So we saw this was released in 15,000 employees. But also, just by looking at Tesla Scope's review of what's happening and their feedback from the 12 employees that they spoke with, there's signs that they're expecting that FSD version 12 will be released by the end of this month, wider than just this first wave. There might be a second wave too before it goes fully wide. What do you guys think about these three? Should we get our hopes up for any of them, or just say, hey, they won't even happen for a couple quarters from now?
It's interesting how we perceive FSD and what the analyst community and how they perceive it. We had a space Gary had a space over the weekend, and Dan Ives was on it, and Gary asked Dan, point blank, like, what do the various funds and folks you talk to, investors, how do they value FSD? And I basically said, if I talk to 20 people about Tesla, maybe one of them talks about FSD and puts any value or puts any model around it. Everyone else just kind of leaves it out. So that's interesting. So I think it goes back on the comm strategy, and I think Alexandra talked about it. She kicked us off with like, what's the business case for FSD? And again, not robotaxi. Before we get to a full-on robotaxi network, is there a business case for FXD and global expansion? So, in terms of like, are there going to be surprises? I mean, I think we are on the cusp of FSD expanding. It would be great to understand from Tesla's perspective, like, maybe update us on the take rate. They keep updating us on the miles driven, but maybe update us too on like, what is the take rate as you've improved the offering? Is the take rate now more meaningful? The last time they actually updated us was a year ago. It was this earnings call a year ago, and they told us that there were about 400 plus thousand downloads. And I think we did the math with Roland. There's about 1.7 million enabled vehicles. So anyway, it'd be interesting if there's an update on FSD, a meaningful update or expansion of it. I think that could be imminent. Like you said, Herbert, I think Highland's got to be getting closer to. Once you see the road test vehicles in greater volume, which is what we're now seeing in the Bay Area, that's usually a sign that they're getting closer and closer to wrapping up for production and just working through the final issues. I don't know. I mean, I know there's a bunch of rumors about Model 3 Highland having steer by wire for the US. I don't know about all that. I mean, if I'm Tesla, I want to reuse as much as possible across regions. And yes, there's going to be local sourcing differences, but in terms of like how the vehicle is designed, I'd want to keep it as close as possible, and have kind of common part numbers as much as possible. So Highland could be imminent. I mean, I would expect it. I mean, in the first half. I mean, normally when you're a global company and you have a product that's in global distribution, you don't normally relaunch it into just a few regions. You normally try to get everything launched within a quarter. So this is actually, it was not a great thing that the U.S. wasn't launched at the end of last year. But I think if they can recover and get it out here pretty early, I think that would be good thing. What I've been saying, what I think is coming in the first half, and I think it's expansion first of FSD, but I think a license partner, and announcing that could be coming very soon, because I think what I see is I see the urgency around that increasing as the competitors capitulate. And when I say capitulate, there's two ways they're capitulating. One is they're taking their EV capacity offline. The other thing is they're shutting down their autonomy efforts, or they're realizing that they're busted. And there's two ways that we're seeing that they're busted. One is that there's a lot more manual intervention happening than what we see. I think everybody was getting into a cruise and they were like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever," and none of us realized that there was the New York Post and some of the other public Washington Post picked up that there's multiple interventions, every few miles that are being manually dealt with by people, basically behind a curtain. So I think there's two ways. One is like, are these robotaxi networks really autonomous? And two is the economics are busted. The unit economics are busted at small scale, and then they don't get much better at larger scale. And I think this goes back to the Tesla business model. So long answer, but I think in short, I think Model 3 refresh or FSD expansion are probably coming pretty soon.
Thanks, Jeff. Anybody else want to address that?
I just agree that it's logical to roll out the 3 refresh, considering that it's already rolled out and you're Osborne in the US.
Okay, so that's three things to be looking out for, whether or not we're going to see FSD expansion, FSD in China, right? Version 12 might be rolled out as well, and then the Model 3 refresh Highland. Okay, so this is a topic that Alexandra and I have been having, and I wanted to bring it to the group here. I think it's important, which is, if you were Tesla, would you continue to invest all your money or the majority of your money on FSD to get to robotaxi? Would you prioritize bots instead? And of course, underlying both is the investment in AI. I've got an answer to that, but let's hear your take on this, Alexandra, because I know your thinking has been changing in the last week or two. You want to share that with the audience?
Yes. I mean, I did share part of it already in prior discussions, but I just have the feeling that robotaxi seems like far away. The authorities in the United States seem to be reluctant, in Europe even more, and China seems to have its own agenda favoring Chinese car makers. So while Mercedes and BMW have obtained level 3 licenses to test in China, they have a completely different approach. I mean, Tesla is technologically so far ahead that you just feel the rest is catching up, so that the regulators get a little bit more comfortable with it. So my feeling, and again, it's only a gut feeling, I don't have more than what I can express, is that robotaxi seems to have moved further in the future. FSD's retail case, in my view, needs to become cheaper and is doable now, right? I mean, it's a more or less shelf-ready product now. And so rather than focalizing more and more on robotaxi, I think they have to move the bot closer to the current state and put more investment there. And with the second option, or with the second field being Dojo, meaning rentable space or usable space in Dojo sold to third parties. And I obviously agree with Jeff that licensing of FSD to other OEMs is still a hot topic, but even if it starts now, OEMs are so slow, it will be for cars that they will sell in 2027. So licensing fees may be upfront, and some of it may be goodwill that shows in the share price, or of course, but the real money of this whole licensing system would come 2027 and beyond. So the discussions we had in our chat room was that we think Tesla is gonna throw most of capex expenditure that is not going into the new factories in Shanghai, in Berlin, in India, in Mexico. I mean, it's just crazy what they're doing all over the world. But on top of it, they're going to throw more and more money into AI, Dojo, and this bot development.
Yeah, I think that's, this is heresy, but I would even prioritize not only bots over FSD, I'd prioritize it over the Model 2, the compact car. Okay, I know it's heresy. This is everything, right? The robots, it's going to impact Tesla's revenue. It'll impact their costs and their margins. It's going to be able to redefine their supplier chain, supplier partners as well. And then it's going to just completely redefine industries. So they need to move forward. And then the reason why they need to do this is they need to completely, buy as many chips as possible and build warehouses. That's where the race is. It's the brains. As you guys can see, the bot looks like it's almost ready in terms of hardware, scalable. It's pretty sleek. It's already got everything it needs to move fingers. It's even got the finger sensors. They need to still apply end-to-end neural nets to figure out the legs, but that's the roadblock right now is the brains. And with the brains, you don't only just do the humanoid robot, but you can also do it to any camera, any device with a camera. You can make that intelligent and smart. And you've already seen quite a few of these Tesla engineers, including Ashok, refer to bot animals beyond just the humanoid. So they are certainly thinking beyond that. So the bot needs to take over. It needs to be the investment, but obviously the underlying that is the Dojo and the supercompute. They need to just compete. Microsoft, the investments is dwarfing, all the other companies are dwarfing what Tesla's doing. And I know the discussion has been that Tesla is able to wisely spend money and they're not wasting the money in R&D, but yeah, at the end of the day, this is pure dollars, right? You have to build chips, you have to buy chips, you have to build data warehouses, you have to afford the energy to power that, and then you have to get the data to feed that to be able to then to race to this point. So that's where the money should be flowing to. And I'd much rather them do that than the others. But with the factory in India and all that, it's too late at this point. They need to do the compact car, and it's going to be defining for Tesla. I'm not saying you should drop it, but you can't drop it in if it harms the path and moving forward for the bots. Anybody else want to address that, Christian or Sam?
I just think the Robotaxi is going to be something coming way later. It has to come after the 25K compact car. So I think that's going to be the bigger focus for the vehicle side. And I agree that I think the AI and bot is top priority. And we've seen the progress with the bot. So I think there's already a lot of money being put into it. There was that picture of like 100+ people behind the bot being developed. So I think there's already a lot already going into it. And I wouldn't expect it to be less going forward.
Yeah, but Sad, if now that they are at this stage, okay, let's say they still need 3 to 6 months for it to even get a second version, a third generation of the bot. But then at that point, right, don't you need to just really build would you not rather than build a bot factory than a Model 2 compact car factory first?
Yeah, I think they do it concurrent though. I don't think I think they're big enough to do it concurrently. I don't think they can afford to do just one at a time anymore.
Christian, do you have any thoughts on the bot?
Oh yeah, you know where I stand.
We know where you
I
stand.
would pour. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but I would pour every single dollar into Optimus. Optimus. For me, that's what I want to see. And because that's the use cases are through the roof. Herbert, you know this. You've done a million shows. The use cases on all these robotics, right? And all the things that it can do and be valuable to society. I love FSD, but again, the regulatory hurdles are immense. The challenges just to get it working perfectly, immense. You know, one little thing, one little accident could set the program back years, right? If the public gets scared. And when you're flying at 80 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, you're going up streets and people are jumping around and cars are weaving in and out, it's easy to blame Tesla FSD as a problem, even though maybe they weren't the problem. So for me, the safer bet for Tesla is to get Optimus up and going, developing that program, scaling the bot production, and selling it to as many businesses or people that want the product so they can enhance their lives. So for me, Optimus 100%. That should be Tesla's new mission. In addition to the sustainability, Optimus, Optimus, Optimus.
And more importantly, it's the thing that's going to attract the engineers out there, the smartest, the brains out there, and it's the thing I think that's going to it's easier to change Tesla to become a robotics AI company, which he's been repeating a few times. That's what's going to change the Tesla stock multiples.
I know, but they sold FSD to people, like people paid for this service, and it's not working fully yet. So what Tesla does in terms of internal prioritization may be one thing or another, but I don't think they can outwardly come out and state that they're deprioritizing something they've already sold into consumers. Furthermore, they're a big company now. Like, they've got to be able to do things concurrently. There is a point where you can't just add people and get something done faster. Like, some of the stuff is, you can't get done faster. It's like creating a human being, baking it, like there's some baking a cake, like there's some things you can't just like add more people, add more capacity and get it done faster. So I'm sure Tesla management thinks in those terms of like, all right, what are the laws of physics? What can I do with more people, with more capital? And I'm sure they're looking at that. I don't think they're capital limited at this point. I would be surprised if they are, but I do agree that they need to expand like their development effort. I've always found it strange, like they're basically developing one car at a time. So I like that in Model 3 Highland, there was a lot of that work done in China and then and the US. And then they were doing Cybertruck at the same time, which is probably late and overlapping. But they've got to be able to do more than one thing at the same time. And I think they are now. So anyway, I don't think they can outwardly state like they're going to prioritize one thing or another, but they can state that like, hey, we've hired this whole bot industrialization team. We've done this, and this. Like, we're putting the bipedal foot down to the metal.
Yeah, but if they call it robotics AI, then that's also robotaxi. These are just robots and wheels, right? Machine, do you want to join?
Whoa! You can't just blow past that. He said bipedal to the metal.
I love it. Bipedal to the metal. Love it. Machine, do you want to join it? Sorry, I think Machine was there longer.
Thanks for having me. I generally agree with all the comments so far. I think we all seem to see the immense opportunity that the bot provides. I would just add, I think the limitations for robotaxi aren't so much regulatory as it is just statistical accuracy needed. That the threshold required to actually deploy true robotaxis is very high. It might be an order of 100x higher reliability than FSD is currently at. So as great as the progress is, it's just a matter of math that what it would take to get to that level. As a data scientist, I get scared when I'm like, oh my God, if someone told me I had to get a model to the performance that FSD would have to be deployed, is such high accuracy and such a high risk that they will get there to make it work across the US, but it may take, an unpredictable number of years. And you can't rely on that as being your key revenue source from AI. So if I had to choose, I would definitely choose Optimus for all the reasons we talked about about its the ability to immediately bring in revenue more easily. And you can see these demo videos from other companies or even through Tesla that show the ability to do some simple tasks that if you can achieve even 20, 50 tasks in a setting either in a manufacturing facility or say fast food facilities, that you can have places like McDonald's buy 100, thousands, 100,000, I don't know, of these things and have them do tasks slowly. You can replace a human worker. You can just do the math and see how quickly it is you can bring up and incur significant revenue from these. So the main challenge for the bot is software. It's doing impressive things, but there's a lot more work to be done. I agree with Jeff that maybe some of that you can't force it, you can't accelerate it too much because some of that might depend on standard machine learning technology evolving, and so you can't just say triple the number of software developers or machine learning engineers and then you'll get there faster. But they have a lot of work to do still with the lower extremity. You notice with these end-to-end tasks, they're actually possibly not controlling the lower extremity during doing it end-to-end. So I think that's kind of a key area we need to see for them to be able to really expand the ability of the bot. And so that's what I'm looking forward to see in the next year.
Thanks, Machine. Emmett.
For years, Xander and I have been saying that Tesla is an ETF. There are multiple startups within Tesla. SpaceX is successfully able to sell the satellite dish as well as launch rockets, deploy them, our own satellites, as well as third-party usages. So there's three major things happening in parallel, and it can't be either or. So with Tesla as a whole, we have wonderfully maturing companies emerging, and the $25,000 car is absolutely essential. We can't cross the marketing bell curve chasm and have 60% of the population driving an EV.
I agree.
Unless and until we get a very affordable kick-ass EV that is just easy to use. It's turnkey. You don't ever have had to driven a EV before. You get in it and it just works. That has to happen. But in parallel, there is a phenomenal business happening in energy, and energy is its own silo, and there's all kinds of subdivisions within energy, and they're rocketing and kicking butt. And similar with Optimus. I am so excited about Optimus. It's going to be a rocket ship as it scales. And the leadership, the cool thing is it can be a small team, but as that grows in its leadership, it can't be impaired by what's happening in other parts of the company. It's just got to be able to fly and scale as large as capacity and demand allows. And there's multiple other ones. I'll say one, I want to call out two big distinctions regarding FSD and Robotaxi. FSD, the ADAS system, is great and it's just getting better. A completely separate product is Tesla Robotaxi, which is an absolute game changer. Once FSD gets to be really awesome, it's full-scale release, and people with high confidence can just babysit their car as it drives them around, that's going to be a huge game changer. But a whole nother level is true Robotaxi. So I just want to keep those separate, and I'm done.
Thanks, Emmett. Hey, AJ, welcome. Love your research that you do.
Hi, thank you very much for the flowers. I just wanted to point out that when you look closely at the numbers, it's quite apparent that Tesla is cooking something. And I'm referring specifically to the capex number. Tesla guided in the latest 10Q that they expect to exceed their full year guidance of 9 billion. This would imply that they're going to spend probably north than 2.5 billion just in a single quarter. Again, this would be all-time high. But as far as I can tell, Tesla is not building any new factories from scratch. So where's this money going? My biggest suspicion is this goes into compute. And the compute is basically then accelerating all the amazing AI products. That's all.
Yeah, that's correct. That's completely correct. We actually know that from Q3 already, because in the earnings call he hinted to that. So in the current quarters, that was our analysis after the Q3 numbers. They are throwing as much as they can on Dojo and on chips for Dojo. The question is, what are they going to guide for next year? Are they also going to, sensibly increase the 7 to 9 billion range that they currently have? And if so, we will need money for Mexico, we'll need money for India, we'll need money for the both mega factory and expansion in Shanghai, and for the Berlin expansion, because that doubles the factory. But even then, if it's more than 10 billion, the question is how much. But if you compare it to the other Mac 7, actually Mac 6, because Amazon doesn't give an R&D and the capex the same way than the others do. The real question is how much they put into research and development, where Tesla is so much more efficient with such a tiny portion of what the other guys are throwing into this whole AI sector.
Yeah, so here's the problem, Alexandra and AJ. I mean, 2 billion is not enough for Dojo chips and data warehouse. It's not enough. And this is not about being more efficient about R&D. This is, you got to buy the chips. You got to build the data centers. You got to increase your compute. And the bigger the compute, the more you can do. Maybe the rate limit step is they don't have the data. Maybe that's what it is. But I think of any company that's going to have the data, it's going to be Tesla. And so why are other companies like Microsoft putting 50 billion? Tesla needs to put in 10 at least.
Yeah, Herbert, you're making a great point. Tesla's actually at a disadvantage. They have, 20 billion, 24 billion, something on the, these
26.
companies like Google. Okay, thank you, Alexandra. 26. These other companies have hundreds of billions. So Tesla is actually at a disadvantage because they're competing, with these other companies that have so much more money. And I agree, Tesla spends it efficiently, and that's great for shareholders, but they are at a disadvantage because the business they run is a very capital intensive business where, the Googles of the world, or even Microsoft to an extent, even Apple, like they don't have those constraints, and they have so much money they can throw at it. They're going to waste a lot, but still Tesla and if you look at the chart, and Alexandra showed the chart, it said Tesla for the chips, they were dead last. Who was getting the chips? Meta, Google, like the NVIDIA chips are not going to Tesla. They're going to these other companies. So, that is a disadvantage, and it's hard for Tesla to overcome that, especially as they're making less money. They have less money to throw at this problem, and the more money they throw at it, their earnings go down, which hurts the valuation starts to explode, and the multiple starts going up. So all I'm saying is, from a holistic point of view, you're right, Herbert. They're at a disadvantage. They'll figure it out, but it is a big disadvantage, and a lot of the game of AI is a lot of it's going to be money. It's going to be money throwing it at it and figuring it out.
Come at me.
Did they buy any companies in order to, with that capex, in order to speed anything up, or no?
They could, but usually Tesla doesn't operate that way. They're the small acquisitions they do, very small. That's not really the way they do it. They usually do everything organic. Is it possible they can find something? But I don't think if Elon's even looking, to be honest.
Well,
let me throw something. Let me throw something in there. I actually believe they should do a capital raise of 20 to 30 billion.
Thank you.
And yeah, I know you were tickling me for that. There I go. So the reasoning is Tesla needs more money now to act as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible. Can they do it with the 26? They have currently, of course they can, but it would be, given what they're doing, expanding in energy, in cars, and what they want to do with the bot, I think it would be really great. And I do believe, when I heard that 10K, and then afterwards I explained what I want to do announcement, that is one thing I really hope they would do. That they're explaining to the market why they need a capital raise. I don't want them to do that, and I don't think Elon would even consider that to do it. But if it does a capital raise of, let's say, 30 billion, I think that is going to make the difference.
Well, if they're going to do it, they should do it now when the market cap's high. They should do it now if they're going to do it. But I agree, they're probably not going to do it. So there's no point in it.
But you're calling this market cap high? I'm confused.
Yeah, 800 billion right now for Tesla with decreasing earnings and cash flow going nowhere. This is a great time to do it if you're going to do it. If you want to raise money, like Alexandra's saying, to compete and throw money at a problem, well, where are you going to get the money? You got to raise it. So there's no guarantee that Tesla 6 months will be much higher or low. We don't know, but I think 800 billion right now, if you raise 10 billion or 15 billion, that's a fraction of 800 billion, Xander. So that'd be a great raise.
So you don't think that the talk or vision casting or whatever, or there's some announcement can propel this forward? Then you're saying here's a good spot.
Well, I mean, you're playing a gamble game. If you're, if you think you could get your stock price even higher and wait, and Elon knows he can do it, I guess, yeah. But if you want the money now and you want to start doing it, then this isn't a low stock price. I mean, it's low relative to where we were at 414, but historically, over the last 5, 6, 7 years, Tesla, this is a very high price.
Alexandra, how would you raise the money? What would you recommend? Bonds, issue new stocks? What do you think?
Sure, issue new stocks. No bonds. No, they're not gonna go into debt. No, issue new stock, and honestly, it will just disappear 3 days later. Nobody will talk about it anymore.
You guys, I don't think it matters what the market cap of the company is. It is today, and you need to raise the money now, and you need to buy those chips tomorrow, and you need to build those data warehouse the next day. This is the race. Omar, yeah. I don't know how much you caught with this conversation. Are you following along? We're basically talking about, Tesla needs to up the game and race with AI, or do you think that they're doing just fine with their $2 billion a year buying, and they'll be able to afford the Model 2 compact as well as the bot, as well as the new factories?
No, I don't think they need to raise. That's a horrible idea. The market would react extremely poorly, I think, if they thought Tesla needed to raise money to sustain their business. They already have more than $20 billion in cash. What the hell do they need to raise for? Certainly not to buy chips. I mean, they're expanding their compute capacity like crazy. They're one of the largest buyers of H100s in the world. Why would they raise? To buy chips?
Omar, I don't think you're correct in pretending that Tesla is one of the biggest buyers of NVIDIA chips. I can actually...
They are. They're one of the hugest buyers by far.
By far not.
And
but
they have their own chips.
They're not even in the top 10. They're not even in the top 10. They're not even in the top 10.
They are in the top 10.
Well, I'm going to pin the... I'm going to ask Sander to help me pin the thing. Just a second.
I mean, many of us have seen that graph. Tesla's really far behind. And then, you've heard
that's
Microsoft...
a graph of the top buyers of NVIDIA chips.
Yeah.
Not a graph of the lowest buyers.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. But they're still way below the big boys.
Who are the big boys?
Google, Meta.
They're not buying those to use themselves. They're buying them for their cloud services, renting to other companies like Tesla.
Yeah, but for their business, though.
Google's doing most of their training on TPUs, 90% of their training on TPUs.
Bring the tweet up.
H100s are for their cloud businesses to rent out to others. So when looking at the H100 purchases, of course, the biggest buyers are going to be the cloud providers. They're not using them themselves. They're renting it out to every other company in Silicon Valley. Tesla has an enormous amount that they're purchasing for themselves. And then they have their own chips that they're making as well. Similar to Google, they have their TPUs and they're buying a ton of H100s. So they don't need to raise money if they want to buy more H100s. They just pick up the phone, text Jensen on iMessage, hey, give us some more H100s, and they can get some. They don't need to raise capital for that.
Do you think that they should at least boost up the $2 billion that they're spending on AI to be more than that?
I mean, that's a lot. I don't think, it's not just a matter of just throwing money at chips and saying, okay, now we can solve this, right? I mean, they have pretty aggressive plans to build up their compute. They're targeting 100 exaflops by the end of the year, like if they get anywhere close to that, if they achieve even half that, it's a crazy amount. And you don't want to be comparing to other cloud providers. You want to be comparing to what other people are using directly.
Yeah,
And,
but Omar,
more than
they're
that, it's
building
not
factories.
really.
They got to build Giga Mexico. If they're going to invest in India, they're going to do all this AI stuff. They need money. I understand 20 billion is a lot of money, but they're in a very capital intensive business. This is just a calm conversation. I'm just saying they need cash. And you could do it. I'm not saying they have to raise, but what I'm saying is if you have these very ambitious plans to build factories all over the world, to be an have robo taxis running, building bots, you need a lot of money. No matter how efficient you spend it, there's a lot of money. And the way Tesla's running their business, the amount of money and the amount of free cash flow they're generating this year as composed to last year is much less. Way
Completely agree.
less with the investment they're doing now. So how are they going to do all these projects, all these capital intensive factories, all this AI stuff, all these chips, and maintain this similar little thing they're doing now? I don't see it.
Completely agree. And contrary to what you think, Omar, I think a 30 billion cap raise will have no impact more than 3 to 5 days on the stock exchange.
Yeah, I mean, I see them having $26 billion in cash. It's actually the largest cash position they've ever had. I think that raising money unnecessarily would be a big mistake. I think the business can generate more than enough cash to fund everything they need, and they've got a pretty sizable cash pile as it is. I think the market would react extremely negatively if they saw Tesla raising.
And you might be right with that. I'm not
this is the
saying that they
one
wouldn't react negatively. It's a good
this is the
conversation. I'm
one
not
thing
saying
they
they
have
wouldn't.
this is the one thing they have over their peers like Rivian, Lucid, others. These companies have to raise to stay afloat. Tesla is the only investable EV company because they don't have to. Now, if you go out and you say we're going to raise, even if you say, yeah, we're raising to grow, whatever, the street's immediately going to be suspicious and they're going to say, oh my
Completely
God,
disagree.
the core business has imploded and that's why they're
Completely
having to
disagree.
raise.
Completely disagree. Now, first of all, you have we're not comparing Tesla here to Rivian or Lucid or anything like that. We're comparing Tesla to the Magnificent Seven, right? So you have Apple, who does a cash flow from operations about 100 billion per quarter. You have Microsoft in the same range. You have Alphabet in the same range. You have Amazon in the 70s to 80s. Nvidia currently still is lower, but let's just take them out. You have Meta in the 65s to 70s. And then you have Tesla in the 10s to 12s, right? And even that now, currently, the free cash flow is lower and could be actually this quarter, Q4 2023, close to zero and maybe $1 billion, but it will be very limited. So given free cash flow over the last 4 quarters, and given the ambitions in the car segment alone, the 26 billion are by far enough. But if we are now an AI and robotics company, there needs to be more money than what we're needing anyway for the expansion in cars. I mean, don't forget, we're building Mexico, we're expanding in Shanghai, both for megapacks and for cars. We're doubling Berlin. So it's not as if there are no projects going on in the car and in the energy sector, Nevada and whatever. But there's also now this whole new segment that we all want, which is bots manufacturing, and Dojo, of course. And so I rather have them do now at these prices a capital raise and have the liquidity they need for that, than thinking, oh God, we're sitting on 26. If we're really sharpening the pencil, maybe we're getting there.
Yeah, I think for these conversations, I think a capital bridge or a bridge chart would be helpful. Because when I look at, I guess in the third quarter, they threw off like 848 million in free cash, and if you were to annualize that rate, that's, I mean, what is that? I mean, that's like
3 billion.
three,
And
three,
even
yeah, 3 billion,
and we're not
and
getting
they're
to 3
spending.
billion this year.
Yeah, and they're supposed to spend about 9 billion in capex, I think, for the prior year. So at some point, their free cash generation with all the moves on pricing, at some point, it looks like they've been spending more on infrastructure. They've been spending more just on total capex, and their free cash flow has come down. So I don't know. I mean, there may need to be a story for investors, because if you look at it over a 2-year horizon, and if they were to stay at this free cash rate, I'm not saying you're going to stay static, but you have to pick something and annualize it. That's $7 billion in cash over 2 years, and it looks like they want to spend around 20. Well, now you're talking about eating into that huge cash pile precipitously, and taking it down a pretty big chunk. So there may need to be some roadmap for investors at some point, and maybe that's what they go through at the end of the month. I don't know, but yeah, this 848 million in free cash. I don't know where Q4 is going to come in. I hope it's better, but that was a kind of a really low number given what they're spending.
Go ahead, AJ.
Perhaps I misunderstood, but the 848 million is post all capex and would include the spending for compute already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a huge mistake. Obviously, as you issue more shares, EPS goes down. So now you've got declining raw EPS, and then you're diluting on top of that, right? So I would actually like to see them do the opposite. I'd like to see them buy back shares at some
So
point.
Omar, 30 billion from 800 billion. How much would that dilute?
I mean, it's more symbolic more than anything else, like I
It's
said.
4%. It's not even 4%. Okay. And so the 4% dilution is going to be absorbed quick. I mean, how many days do we have with a 4% stock movement? And at the same time, having 30 billions in the treasury and available gives you such more length of investment. I mean, I hardly agree with Christian ever. I love fighting with Christian all day long, but he's completely right. At 800 billion, this is the moment to do it.
And just thank you for that, Alexandra. Love discussing with you too. And Omar, I'm not picking on you, but the dividend is I think we kind of debated this. So they have, let's say they have 25 billion, 26 billion in cash. If they take 10 billion and buy back shares, which Elon said he would consider, and he hasn't done, and he probably hasn't done it for a good reason because he's worried about, the macro or whatever. If you take 10 billion, that is a complete waste of money put in the stock. It's not even going to have a dent in the EPS on an 800 billion market cap. 10 billion of 800 billion is a peanut. It's nothing. It's a complete waste of billions of dollars at this moment because they're not generating enough cash or earnings at the moment to do a buyback. That's why they're not Google, they're not Apple. They got hundreds of billions. That would be the worst move, is a buyback.
Yeah, you know what? I think we should just move on. I don't want to talk about buybacks and whether need to do a raise. We had a good discussion on that. I've got another topic to talk about, but AJ and Machine, did you guys want to add to this on this particular topic?
I just wanted to.
I just did one quick point. So I personally, I'm not sure if I fall on one or the other side in terms of capital raise or not. But one thing I'd like to point out is if we were to raise capital, this assumes that we could actually buy H100s or whatever, that there is available capacity we could tap into quickly. I'm not sure this is a given. Hence, if we collect tomorrow 30 billion, we might only be able to spend it in 12 months from now, so it's pointless. So I think that might be an issue in reality.
That's a good point. Okay, so 17 years ago, a big event occurred, and I bet you, Omar, you probably know what it is. 7 years ago today. Do you know what it is? Yeah, so
7 years ago or 17?
17 years ago. Yeah.
I know what it is.
The iPhone.
Yeah. So what I was saying that Steve Jobs went up 17 years ago today and he said, I've got a cell phone, I've got a music player, and I've got an internet device. I've got a cell phone, I've got a music player, I've got an internet device. Are you guys getting it yet? It's all one device. Wouldn't it be great if Elon came up and said, I've got a car, I've got a bot, I've got AI. I've got a car, I've got a bot, I've got AI. You guys aren't getting it. It's all one thing. This is robotic AI. So at the beginning, I don't know if you missed this conversation. Omar, I wanted to ask you. We were just saying, Elon has set a time. He said that that's after the 10K drops. He's going to do a space. He's going to talk about the future of Tesla. And I was thinking that it'd be, he's been repeating quite often that, Tesla's now a robotics AI company. What's your thoughts on what he might say at that space?
Well, I don't know what he's going to say. I think he's going to give an overview of the company, what he sees as the vision for the future.
Okay, yeah. So that would be fun if he did that, though. Double down on that. Okay, Emmett, did you have did you have your hand up earlier? Did I miss you? No.
No, you didn't miss me. And Herbert, that was fun. I'm glad you threw that out there. I was hoping other people would jump on that and get into it because, yeah, it is. That was a significant Apple moment when that got into the consciousness of everyone. And Apple's not there yet. People haven't reached that level of awareness. Excuse me, Tesla's not there yet in terms of the zeitgeist. People haven't reached that level of awareness. And it would be fun if he poked at them that way. I think that'd be hilarious.
Yeah. Tesla Yoda, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, sorry to go back to the previous point, but maybe one way to think about it is that Tesla is like a giant group of startups, as Elon mentioned, like a dozen technology startups, and so maybe if and when they do want to go for a capital raise, that they can reassure that from the auto business side, that's free cash flow generating, and that the funds are used for specifically this part of the startup, such as the dojo or autopilot, or perhaps acquiring like Tesla's own fleet of robo taxis, etc. But maybe making that distinction kind of allows investors to see that this is not that the auto business is no longer generating cash or for some other reason.
Very well expressed. Well done.
Okay, so for another topic here, who here is getting a little bit afraid and concerned about all these announcements that we're hearing, right? So you have the Figure CEO, Brett Adcock, talking about how his bot has progressed significantly. You can see how it looks great. I've done a number of shows on this. And then he said that they had an AI breakthrough, very likely in partnership with a Google DeepMind, where they were able to teach the bot how to, set up a coffee, like a Keurig coffee maker, and it was able to do something very similar to what Tesla is. Every day we're hearing drops from many new robot companies, from the Chinese. You're hearing all these new cars coming out. I think there's 70 new cars coming out in the next 2 years, electric vehicles. So, in our little group, some of us were talking to each other, and not necessarily with electric vehicles, but maybe in AI, maybe in bots. How are you guys feeling about that?
I mean, it validates the space. It validates the value in the space. I never thought that like Tesla would just be all alone in bots. In fact, they're really coming from behind in the field of robotics. I think they're making great progress. But I never thought they would be all alone. But I do think they're kind of uniquely capable of doing kind of all the way from the silicon level all the way to the end consumer level and presenting a product. I think that's where a lot of companies struggle. And I think that's why they're going to get there on FSD faster than anyone, is they have that silicon to consumer level connection. So yeah, nervous is like, I think the space is being validated. All I would tell you is, again, from being in tech as well, is everything you see in these videos, and I've been behind some of these videos before. Everything you see in video versus like what's actually like the real world performance can sometimes be two different things. And I would, we've seen this now with some of the, robo taxis and what's really going on behind the scenes. And especially, this especially happens it happens in the US, it happens outside the US a lot, too. And I don't want to call it one particular country or another, but, so yeah, there's competition there. Be careful what you see in a 2 or 3 minute video. I mean, I would be like, as an investor, I think you're always trying to like look for, what could go wrong, what, who's out there, what's the competition. You should always be doing that. But I also think, like I said, I think you have to go back to core fundamentals, and you look at like, how are these companies and how are they equipped? They have the ability to deliver like a vertically integrated end-to-end solution, or are they dependent on partners? A lot of these partner relationships, they sound good when they're announced, but when they're actually executed, they work like total shit. So I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just telling you, I do like going like picking the horse that's kind of vertically integrated end to end with a visionary CEO, highly technical CEO and team. I think you're kind of in the best position you can possibly be in. It doesn't mean you're going to win everything, but I think you're in the best position.
There's no partnership between Figure and DeepMind.
There's something awesome about Tesla's position in a few different areas. With robotics, they have the software, the hardware capabilities, but on top of that, they have real world applications that they can immediately deploy those robots to. So I'm sorry, but I've seen many of the other manufacturers and the quote unquote big boys in different areas, including Microsoft, they don't have the chops to successfully go that whole path to make a robot that's real world work as fast and efficiently as Tesla is already doing and will continue to do for the next 10 to 15 years. So on that vertical alone, they have a massive advantage that even with the extra money doesn't matter. They're going to get in their own, other companies will get in their own way. And the small startups, they're not capitalized well enough. And even if Microsoft buys them or some other company buys them, they won't be agile enough to manage that process. So, and that same thing kind of applies with FSD and artificial general intelligence. That's probably the largest vulnerability for Tesla is whether or not, or the Elon Musk ecosystem, including X.com, whether they'll get to artificial general intelligence first. They very well may not. But in terms of them being a super juggernaut financially and revenue, Robotaxi, FSD, energy, and the car itself, next 5 to 10 years, they're huge, period.
I don't know who had their hands up first. Sorry, I'll go through AJ first, and then we'll go down the line here. Go ahead, AJ.
Yeah, so I would say you had a two-part question, basically competition in robotics and competition in EVs through the upcoming 70 models or something, what you said. I would compare this to the earlier phase of the EV, so let's call it revolution. We also saw, and we still see tons of startups, all of them still struggling while Tesla is making money. Unfolding in the robotics side, while the others still try to make the products, sell products, but it's lost because, as you all guys know, Tesla is super focused on cost. And I think cost is actually one of the elements of the robotics revolution that might be not really appreciate. Everybody's, of course, focused on the AI brain, which, of course, is the enabler. But then cost becomes crucial because a robot that costs 1 million to make has a tiny market. A robot at 100K has a probably 100-fold bigger market, and then a robot at 20K is probably 100x of that market. So cost is a crucial differentiator here, and in terms of economics that you can achieve ultimately. And then in terms of the EVs that are coming up, people should keep in mind that Tesla's main product, the Model Y, is basically very old now, and they're about to launch the new one probably in the next 6 months. So the upcoming vehicles, they're not competing against the current Model Y. They have to compete against the new one. And if we learn one thing from Tesla, from the just recently refreshed Model 3, which I looked at in great detail because there is one Tesla showroom not far from me. It's better in basically every way. And if I extrapolate that experience onto the Model Y, it's going to do phenomenally well. And especially if Tesla then can realize more cost, blah blah. They will be very hard to beat in the market. So that's why I'm not afraid of these tons of models. From my research, I see that usually a few models take the cake, and then there's a huge, long, big tail of other models that just say that they just sell very paltry numbers, and they're not really making a lot of money. But anyways, I stop here.
That's great points, AJ. Yoda?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think on the humanoid side, right now it's like another day, another EV prototype, and now we're gonna probably enter another day, another humanoid prototype. So the winner, much like the EV side, the winner will be an AI company that manufactures robots at scale, and underscoring kind of the manufacturing advantage that Tesla has relative to a startup that is maybe prototyping humanoid robots, and think of the capital that they need versus maybe the ability to leverage the cash flow that Tesla has. And then because of that initial advantage, the size of the humanoid fleet on the Tesla side to then acquire the training data necessary will be greater. Again, much like the EV side of things. And so if the race is towards who can build the most generalized humanoid, and why that is it's like the number of tasks that the humanoid can accomplish. Would anyone want to buy a humanoid that can do 5 tasks if another humanoid can do 30 tasks and more, maybe through OTA updates over time? And so I think the race is going to be who can build the most generalized humanoids at scale, and then in a more complicated scenario as well, how can that humanoid interact with other kind of semi-sentient robots? So, for example, Tesla might have an advantage if the humanoids is tightly or natively integrated with the Tesla car that drives that humanoids to the grocery store to pick up grocery for you or to deliver something, versus having a Tesla's car versus a different company building the humanoid.
Ooh, interesting. Machine?
Yeah, a lot of good points. I just want to reiterate in data science, machine learning, what's becoming apparent, and from my own experience, is the main limiting factor and the main gold that someone can own is a unique data set. The training methodologies, the different architectures that people discover at various companies end up being fleshed out and open sourced, and can be used by anyone. But what can't be accessed is the training data, which is the whole reason why these companies are building up huge resources of compute. There's no point in getting so much compute unless you had a massive amount of data to go with it. That's what the transformer architecture has shown, the ability for both of those things to increase accuracy on a log scale, basically continuously, as you increase compute and data. And so for bot, you have to look at who's going to be able to generate a lot of real world data. Real world data requires real world bots, requires integration of the hardware with the software, with your chip and upload, download capabilities from a large amount of bots to generate that data. And really, there's no one right now doing that. And obviously, we can see Tesla as an example from FSD that they're able to do that with the car, and they're going to be able to do that with the bot way faster than basically anyone else for bipedal robots. That's like a slam dunk. I have no concern for the bot. And FSD
That's exactly it, Machine. Honestly, you should frame this. You should do a post on this because you summed it up. Never heard it so well articulated.
And the question, though, right? The Mobile Aloha just revealed just this week, right? There's 3 Stanford grad students funded by Google that if you have a teleoperated bot, in this case, 2 thumbs, 2 pinchers, and 2 arms. It can do all these tasks at home. If you just show it 50 times, they can then the bot is able to do autonomously. So teleoperation, simulation, just video, just like what Figure said, right? We just showed it video. We showed it this human 10 hours of video of how to use the machine, and now we can do it. And so that's, I mean, I still agree. I still believe that this data advantage that Tesla has in both robotaxi and bots is going to be the difference. But then you have to pause, you have to study, and you have to see whether or not just simple video could be enough to teach a bot to do certain tasks. That's the one thing to keep an eye out.
Can I add something? So, I mean,
Yeah, please.
first of all, I agree with that. So, my background was in biomechanics and modeling kind of humanoids back in the day, and it was always clear. It was difficult at the time, but now clear that the idea of pose estimation, which is basically looking at a video and watching someone do something and reconstruct the 3D kinematics, is basically like a solved problem in machine learning now. And so for any of these companies to do that part, I think is kind of straightforward. So you will be able to get someone, just the bot watching someone do something, and be able to basically invert how to do it so that the bot can do the same movement approximately. And that's going to be very powerful. You don't need to have someone go in a suit of sensors or stay in the same position as the bot and record video from the same perspective. Like, you don't have to do any of that. You just go do a movement and it will be able to approximately reconstruct. But just to the data superiority, again, I just want to reiterate the point for FSD. Of course, the same thing is the case with FSD, that the amount of data required is immense. And there's no other companies really with that vast breadth of data. And that's where I've ranted before with Waymo and especially Cruise, the hilarity of people arguing that they had enough data when at the same time they were deploying, after they deployed in SF, the CEO, former CEO now, Kyle Voigt, was listing out how the performance in other cities was worse. And then they collected more data in those cities and the performance got better. And it even improved the performance in San Francisco. And when I heard those tweets, I was thinking, this is a classic example of not having enough data. All those events that he described about how the model was overfit to the data they had in San Francisco, so it performed worse in the next city. And then as you got more data, it got better everywhere, is a classic example. And I already knew before, that they just simply did not have enough data. And they were being over aggressive with their scaling because obviously they need to for funding reasons. And they crash and burn, which is not surprising. And Waymo is kind of the other end. They still don't have enough data, but they're being extra conservative with their deployment. And you see, they claim they're in Los Angeles for like a year. They've not deployed it. They've been, quote, testing. What does that mean? It means they're trying to collect enough data for their probably 5x5, 25 square miles or something they're going to do. So Tesla's on the other end of this. They have enough data, or they have more than everyone else. And it's just about solving the problem in a scalable way, which still may take years, but it's architecturally designed to be stable, right? They're cash flow positive on their FSD products, or at least neutral, and that allows them to last longer. They may just outlast everyone else.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Machine. Makes me feel better a little bit. Sat?
Yeah, I would say that kind of like overview is that I see it as a third wave of EVs of other OEMs coming around and trying to compete with Tesla, and a lot of them will fail, and it's because like anybody could start a business and just buy suppliers and then start putting in a car and make a car at a really high price. So that's why like they're not making money like the way Tesla is. And like the difference is the business model is very different in Tesla versus other companies because even for FSD, it's the drivers, the customers, us, the drivers are actually helping get the data, but they're still making money off of it. Or in Optimus, you don't have to have the race to like the most complete bot versus another company. You just have to have the one simple task that they want to use in the factory and then start from there. So it doesn't even have to be completed. But if you're a third, completely different bot company and you want revenue, you have to have a certain level of accomplished product services in order to be able to sell it. You can't say, hey, it just moves this object but does one screw. you can't just have one feature on it and expect to be able to sell the product. So it's going to be many years before they can get any kind of revenue, whereas Tesla can actually do it in real life and for the in the factory production what it was designed for immediately, right? So there's a difference in that they can actually utilize that in the place they want to get data and then go back and then fix it or upgrade it. The other companies can't do that. They have to actually sell the product. So that's why it takes way longer. So there's no way they're going to be as efficient as Tesla is. So even though there's competition, they see, oh, Tesla's doing it, let's try it out. And then Tesla's the one that's like providing a lot of ideas, and other companies and people are trying to do the startups in it. The same with the charging. There's no one that's more easy to charge than the superchargers to this day. So
I mean, to say that you're afraid for Optimus because of the Aloha robot, I mean, there's a massive gap between something that's a university level research project and something that's a finished project. This is obviously something that is a laptop on a stand connected to a robotic arm. You read the paper, they say, we got it to do it 5 times in a row, or we got it to do it 9 times in a row. For a product that you can sell to the consumer, it really needs to do it thousands of times in a row. So there's, obviously a massive, massive gap between doing something at the research paper level and having something that's actually a product that provides economic value. And you just look at the auto business as a guide. People have been saying for a decade or more, the competition is coming, the competition is coming. And we have so many examples of the Tesla killer, right? The Jaguar I-Pace, the Chevy Bolt, a number of different things. And still to this day, nobody has ever sold more battery electric vehicles in a full year than Tesla. 2023, again, they were about 200,000 units ahead of BYD. Maybe BYD will take it this year, but that'll really be the first time for decades they've been number one. And they haven't been number one because nobody else made EVs. They were number one because they stayed ahead of everybody else. They produced more than everybody else. They introduced innovations faster than anybody else. So the robot market is obviously too early to call. It could go in any direction, but Tesla has some really compelling advantages. A lot of people have been talking about robotics and foundation models for robotics, and they've said, why is it that we haven't seen the same type of breakthrough that we've seen in language models yet? And a lot of people have said, well, it's actually because the data set isn't there. You don't have the data set the same way you have all this info on the internet, and you don't have the scale. So, actually having a global factory footprint where you can mass manufacture this thing, where you can get data back and train on it, and having a team that's actually competent in this, that has pushed safety critical software at a global scale already and is managing that sort of process live. That's a huge advantage compared to some random startup like figure. So it's obviously very early to call, but they have some key advantages that differentiate them. Their expertise in developing chips and software for autopilot, their expertise in shipping very highly reliable software with autopilot, their data advantage, and more than anything, their global factory footprint. If we have a robot that's sort of mass produced at scale, that would be very different than anything we've seen before in the world of robotics.
Love it, Omar. That's so brilliant. Okay, so just a quick question. It's a big question. We probably should devote an entire show on this, but I just want to get a quick answers from the panel here. When do we think that Tesla's going to have 1,000 Tesla
I
bots?
just want to add that personally, I'm very glad that Elon put Optimus under the Tesla banner as opposed to the SpaceX side
Oh
of the
yes.
portfolio.
Oh yes.
Because that could have been the case if these robots were supposed to build the Martian civilization. And then the other future product that I hope he will put under the Tesla banner would be planes. That one again is right, literally in the middle of ground and space. So hopefully he puts that one on the Tesla side.
Yeah. Did you guys hear what I was asking earlier? Should I repeat it?
2024.
Okay, so when is Tesla going to have 1,000 robots, and then when are they going to have the robot demoed, just a demo, being able to do something in the factory? Let's go down the list here. Alexandra?
First half of 2024.
Wow. Okay, because some people are saying you're crazy. This is going to take years. Jeff?
The first 1,000 working in a factory?
No, Tesla has produced 1,000 robots, and then a demo that some of them are working in a factory as a demo.
I don't think they're going to tell us, but I would say 1,000 robots. If I were first half 2025.
Okay, and then how about you, Omar? Curious.
Yeah, probably by the end of 2025. It's
End of
possible they could
2025.
do it this year, but that's a little bit of a stretch, so I'll say 2025.
Okay, Xander?
Yeah, I was gonna say Q1 of 25, maybe Q2. I think by the end of this year, they'll be far enough along to launch production of Optimus.
Gotcha. And then Sat?
Yeah, looking at the progress of the last 18 months, I would say in another 18 months.
Okay. Anybody else want to answer that question?
I had answered 2024 earlier. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if you'd heard me.
I did.
Alexandra is bold with 6 months. That's
And you heard me. I want to throw the money at it. I want to do everything. You have no idea how impatient I am.
Yeah, it's going to happen in this year, 2024. You can see that he'd already said that the actuators were the rate limiting step, and that there should be mass scale by the end of November. And you can see that they've pretty well finalized the mechanics. Anyways, it's all about the brains, and I think that we're going to be shown another brain demo about the brains in the next 3 months, and there's nothing stopping them from creating 1,000. That's not going to be that difficult, I say, by the end of this year.
Well, you wouldn't build 1,000 if you've got another rev in design. So I want to hear the magic words that from Elon that they've design locked the bot.
Yeah.
And that really sets the timetable up.
It actually can go either way, Jeff. In this case, because the reason why you would create a
question
just
about how the bot might be different than a car in this case. So if it's pencils down for the car, that's really necessary because then you don't want to change the design when you start to manufacture it. For the bot, if they had to change the fingers or elbows down or change knees down, is it actually maybe more modular, that sort of iteration 2 where the hands are changed could just replace the hands?
No, it's not a zero sum thing. When you say design lock, doesn't mean like no part can change. What it means is you can go to all your production tooling vendors and tell them to actually cut steel, which is the expensive part, and then make those tools. And then you could modify you can modify a production tool, but what you're in is you're in the smaller strokes of modification at that point. So design lock doesn't mean no more changes. Design lock means industrial design is done, packaging's done. When I say packaging, of how the device goes together, manufacturing methods are done high level, and you're ready to go for tooling. So then you can build the larger scale prototypes. So that's what we want to hear from Elon, is that they're design locked.
I think the difference between a bot and a car, though, is that in this case, the bot is needed. Some people are saying you need 1,000 in order to collect the data, right? Getting out in the world, opening things, grabbing things, touching things, feeling things, and be able to see things, and that feeds it. And they need 1,000 to be able to really ramp up. So you might produce 1,000 and then have your third gen, and that's going to go to scale. But you need that 1,000. That's the only potential difference between the two. All right, I'm going to go ahead and fantastic conversation this time. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Please follow CyberBulls1. You can see that there. And follow us. We're going to do this space every week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
All the speakers, too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.